The inner rebel. Hello, this is Chris speaking, Shores of Infinity, with a video about the inner rebel. Last time we talked about the inner critic, a voice that probably most of you know very well. Now let's have a look at the inner rebel, which is probably also a voice that you know very well, but it is, I think, much harder to recognize, to spot. You can spot the inner critic easily because it's always negative. It's always criticizing someone, either yourself or someone else. So that's easy to see. But the inner rebel often sounds like the voice of freedom, saying no, standing up for yourself, defending yourself, owning up for yourself. It can be, but it can also be the inner rebel. And both those parts, the inner rebel and the inner critic, they are ancient trauma responses. They're parts of the psyche, of the personality that have been split off in the past as a defense mechanism. Because something horrible happened, and those parts, those guardian parts like the rebel and the critic, their job is to make sure that something that horrible will never happen again. To me, to you. And whenever a voice like this comes, this will never happen to me again. I will never be hurt like this again. I will never be abandoned like this again. I will never be cheated like this again. Then you know it's a defense. It's a hurt part of yourself that wants to protect the whole. But at the same time, it's a limitation, of course. If you say, I will never get into this situation again, that's a very wide definition. It's not defined at all, actually. So these parts will make sure that you don't even come close to this kind of danger. And thus you miss a lot of other opportunities. You limit yourself, you run around with blinders, like a horse with blinders. The most important goal for these parts, for these inner guardians, is safety, security, so that you will not get hurt, that you will not be abandoned again, not be lied to again, and so on. Which is, of course, an impossible task. You can never make sure that this will never happen to you again. Well, this kind of control freak attitude will fuck up your life. It will dull down your life, and you will not take any risks, which is necessary. Enlightenment is a risky path because you have to jump into the unknown. And these guardian mechanisms, like the inner critic and the inner rebel, they will make sure that you will not jump into the unknown. That's the last thing they want to go to. So sometimes we need the inner rebel to have the guts to say, okay, now this job I will quit now. That's too much. I will not be talked to like that. Or I will not be treated like that. Or I will not work for that little money. Then it's very helpful. Or in a love relationship, or even in a guru-student, teacher-student, master-student relationship, to know, okay, this is not right. I'm quitting. Fuck you. For this, the inner rebel is good. It's a good defense mechanism of the personality in day-to-day life. Of course, it's not the best possibility. The best possibility is to not have to use the inner rebel. There are other ways to defend yourself and to stand up for yourself and to protect yourself than this automatism. But as long as there's still this inner pain, this inner psychological hurt from wherever in your past, then this also works. It's better than nothing. That's why it does exist. It's not for naught. It was very useful and helpful up till now. And now you can decide, do you want to keep this or do you want to open up for a more risky spiritual path where this guardian will stop me? The inner rebel and the inner critic, they will not let you go towards enlightenment. They are very, very afraid of total inner peace, of total inner silence. They cannot stand it, for they confuse it with trauma. It's like Mike Helvig in Radical Allowing explains very well, it's a confusion between a causal and a temporal relationship. When you were small, you were feeling safe but also open and curious and peaceful and everything, and we're just drifting around in la la land, and suddenly something horrible happened. And these guardians, they think this horrible thing, this beating or rape happened because you were in this state of silence and peace before. So this is a temporal relationship. First there was peace, then there was trauma. But the guardian thinks it's a causal relationship, that the trauma happened because you were in a state of peace and silence and naivete to some degree. So for them, enlightenment and trauma is the same thing, and so they will never let you go there. Until, of course, you reintegrate them, and thus they don't have to guard you all the time anymore and look for safety and security every single second of your waking life. Also, what is very common is that these inner rebel guardians, they don't only protect you from stuff that is really bad for you, but they can also protect you from stuff that is really good for you. You may be in a job that poses a certain challenge, or in a relationship that poses a certain challenge, but it's very worthwhile. Or you found a teacher who tells you something very different. It's not the usual stuff, but it's somehow very, very interesting and also challenging. It challenges your worldview. Or you read a book where another worldview is extrapolated. And here the rebel will say no. No, that's not true. That can't be. That's wrong. That's a lie. I won't believe this. This whole science thing is an inner rebel, collective inner rebel movement, yeah? It's a rebellion. That's how spiral dynamics works. It's always a rebellion against what was before. First, there is purple, small communities. Then there's the rebellion of red. No, one person can have more say. Then there's the rebellion of blue. No, we need laws. So to rein in those red people. Then there's the rebellion of orange, science, logic, against everything that is religious and tradition. And then there's the rebellion of green against everything that was before, including science and logic. But the trouble of those orange rebels is that they cannot see that there are colors beyond green. So for them, everything beyond green must be blue. Because the only thing they know is blue, orange, and green. And they hate everything that is not orange, except blue is still, it depends. Yeah? If it's mainstream, okay, but if it's religion, it's not okay. And in green, it's the same thing. The green meme rebels against almost everything, but it also rebels against spirituality. A green person will find someone who is in yellow or turquoise or coral or teal appealing at first, but then will start to rebel if that person or guru says something that doesn't sound politically correct or gender neutral or save the environment enough or isn't a vegan or whatever. So although it sounds like the voice of freedom and the voice of reason, the inner rebel can hinder you, can prevent you, can stop you from walking new paths, trying out new stuff, expanding your worldview, because it doesn't fit into its framework. And then maybe your wife or your husband or your guru says something to challenge you, to push you into a certain direction that would be really good for you. But your inner rebel says, okay, this person seems to mistreat me or insult me or whatever, and then I leave. I know this here, maybe you know this from your experience, but I definitely know this here from this YouTube, Facebook, Patreon, email experience via this channel, Shows of Infinity. People sometimes ask questions, and when I reply, they feel insulted because they don't understand the reply. And then their inner rebel kicks in, and they think, oh, what an asshole, and so on. But actually, that is or was the answer that would have helped them to progress if they could allow it. But if it's going into their trauma direction, then often they can't allow it because it re-triggers their trauma. Or at least the inner rebel thinks it does re-traumatize. The inner rebel is very, very, very sensitive. And he or she or it checks everything that happens and everything anyone else around says for trauma triggers. That's anyway a possibility how to spot the inner critic or the inner rebel when the voices in your head talk about the others, they, them, the people in general. There are no people in general. There is no they, them, the others. That doesn't really exist. That's trauma speech. That's trauma speech. That's guardian speech. The others don't understand me. The others are mean to me. I'm so different. No one understands me. No one accepts me how I am, who I am, and so on. That's trauma speech. So, go and look, I suggest, to find this voice. The inner critic is easy to find. The inner rebel is not so easy to find. And but you will find it. And then it's easier to deal with it once you know that such a thing exists and that its purpose is to safeguard you from anything that's different than now. It will safeguard you from harmful things, but also from progressive things where you could learn from. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. Give it a like, give it a thumbs up if you like the videos to help others find the channel. Thank you for joining me as a Patreon. Thank you to all my Patreons, and see you soon.